everyone. Welcome to Bronx Breakdown Episode 2. Today, we'll be breaking down the men's team. As you know, regular season's all over. We're getting into the conference tournament. It's Champ Week. It's time to go. As always, I'm your host, Patrick Chaffee. Co-host, Dante.
What's up, guys?
Here with Thomas.
Hello.
Also part of our Bronx Breakdown crew. And special guest today, Aaron Presti. Aaron, start off, just tell us a little about what you do.
Yeah, so essentially I do the short-form social media coordination for the Rider News Sports, and I cover a lot of the men's team. And it's been an absolute blast this season, and even the guys of the men's team, they reach out to me via Instagram, and they tell me to send over some videos that I take, but I essentially just film a lot of their clips for the game, and I put it all together, and then I post it out on TikTok for the Rider News. And that's essentially all I really do here for Rider.
Cool. So, I mean, you've been around the team the whole year. You know the ins and outs. You know everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So, we'd love to hear your insight today. But just to kick things off, Dante, what's the season looking like how did the season go for our Bronx?
But I think you can definitely see the difference between how they do play at home compared to the ones away. I feel the student section has really been helping them late into the matches. I don't know if you could attest to that, Aaron.
I can. No, I film a lot of you guys getting loud and cheering on the Bronx, but there's definitely a different atmosphere when it comes to home games. And but a lot of the home games as of recent have been very, very close, and some of them resulting in last-second losses, especially this final game against the Iona Gales, as we all know that went down to the wire. Unfortunately, Dwight Murray Jr. had to do a half-court heave to try to, seal the game with a dub. Obviously, it didn't have any implications to what the tournament looked like as far as seeding goes, but there was also a little miscommunication as far as time management went. There was a few seconds left on the clock. You look at, I believe it was Alan Powell, I think it was, accidentally committed a foul. Left too much time on the clock, and that kind of sealed Rider's fate for that last game. Again, no implications as far as tournament seeding went, but that's something that we have been struggling with recently as far as, the recent home games goes, and we can't really, do that in the tournament or else we're going to cost ourselves.
Yeah, just like you've been saying, late game execution in close games is key when it comes to, conference tournaments, and even if they were able to win the tournament, get into the big dance and maybe pull an upset. So, do you mind diving more deeper into their late game execution problems, and what are some things they could do to maybe improve that getting into close games in the tournament?
Well, I think part of the late game execution starts up front with the early game execution, because a lot of the times in our losses and our late game struggles, we start off really, really cold. Shooting, below 30%, missing our shots. We start to warm up, and we always catch up score-wise, but we always give that team an early lead, and we can't really do that, especially against the small teams. There's quotes getting thrown around throughout campus saying that we really play up to the bigger teams like Iona, like we did in our last game, and like we did against Siena. And then when it comes to teams like Quinnipiac or Mount St. Mary's or St. Peter's, we struggle a lot. We play down to their level, and that's a problem. It's like that underestimating thing. So when it comes to late game execution, I think it all starts with starting hot against teams we should be able to beat, and keeping our same pace with the teams that aren't competing right there neck and neck with us.
So what you're saying is we're very inconsistent.
I think inconsistency is the biggest problem, especially with our shooting splits. You look at two guys really up front in our front court, Mervyn James and Tariq Ingram. They have great shooting splits. From the field, obviously they're closer to the basket, and they're going to be successful close to the rim. But then you look at Alan Powell and Zarian Blue. They've been really, really struggling from the field. They're shooting below 30% apiece. And Zarian, who's a defensive specialist, he needs to be able to play his role as a 3-and-D player and knock down those three-pointers when he needs to, and he just hasn't really been doing that as of recently.
Yeah, 'cause that is actually one of the struggles of the men's team is their 3-point shooting.
Yeah, exactly.
They
All
are
season
last
long.
in the MAAC in 3-point field goals made for the
Mhm.
season, and they don't really shoot much.
No, not at all. But we do have talented shooters.
Yes,
Alan
we do.
Powell is a great, great shooter, especially
Same
from
with
the
Murray.
mid-range game, and same with Murray. So we can shoot the ball. It just is a matter of, I guess, the attempts that we take and the
The type of
quality
shot.
of shots. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
type of shot.
Mm-hmm.
And just to discuss more of our backcourt, like on paper and from watching games, like Dwight Murray and Alan Powell look like they can be like a high octane offensive backcourt, and it just seems like from what I've seen, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Aaron. Like when they're scoring and when they're going, the team is really good and really hard to beat. Just so like, what do you think about the backcourt? Like, are they the guys driving this team?
Yeah, by far. They're the 1 and 2 of this team. They are the leaders. And when they start getting hot and they start making their shots, you can tell not only by the crowd reaction, but just by the team in general, that motivation and that drive gets really, really high mid-game. But sometime down the road, we get timeouts from the other team or timeouts on our own, and then that kind of stops that momentum. But when you look at Dwight Murray and Alan Powell and the way they play together, it's almost like a give and take type deal. One person in that backcourt, they like to score a lot, at 15, 20 points a game. And then say that goes to Dwight Murray Jr. And then Alan Powell, on the other hand, he'll still put up 9. He's just a gifted shooter, a gifted athlete. But then you look at his advanced stats, and he'll grab, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, and all his other stat lines look very, very solid around the board. So it's a nice give and take between the two guards, and they play their roles very, very well. And it's really just a matter of who's hot and who's got the shooting hand that night.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And now to just let's jump into some of the matchups we're going to see in the tournament. We know the Bronx are the 2 seed. Going to play the winner of Fairfield and St. Peter's. Those 2 teams play tonight on Tuesday. So like, what's that first round matchup against either Fairfield or St. Peter's going to look like?
Yeah, so Fairfield, currently their struggles are turnovers. They have about 7 players that average 1 to 2 turnovers a game, which I think leads the MAAC conference, which is very, very terrible. And St. Peter's can take advantage of that. However, St. Peter's is still 7-13. They just struggle with shooting. Ever since they lost Doug Eater from that miracle season last season, we all remember it, the Mustache Wonder. So he went, where did he go?
He went to Bryant.
He went to Bryant, yeah.
East.
He's still lighting it up over there, but since they lost their leading scorer, the scoring has just not been as efficient as they like to be, and that results in the 7-13 record for St. Peter's. My prediction is Fairfield. The turnovers are costly, but they make up for it in their scoring ability and scoring efficiency, and I think they have a lot of big men down low that can really help with that. On the other side of the bracket, you have Manhattan and Marist. I think this is really a runaway for Manhattan. They're sitting at 10-10 with an even record. So let's say Manhattan moves on to Quinnipiac in the next round, and then we face Fairfield. Any 3 of those teams, Fairfield, Quinnipiac, Manhattan, I think we have an easy ride to the semis. This is no debate. I think we have the easier half of the bracket compared to the Iona Gales, who sit at the 1 seed. So we should cruise to the semis, and I'd be shocked if we don't.
Okay. And so they get to the semis, and would they be playing Quinnipiac? Most likely, not to like make predictions, but like, Quinnipiac is a team they're probably going to face, the 3 seed.
Mm-hmm.
And I know earlier this year they had that double overtime loss on the road to Quinnipiac.
Right.
Off a blown lead too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a close game we've been talking about. So I think, like you said, they need to be able to start games well and then execute down the stretch if they want to beat it.
Yeah, but this season's been kind of weird though, because I know with the blown lead in Quinnipiac, we also came back from like a 10+ point deficit against Iona at Iona.
Yeah.
So it's like it's all over the place.
Okay. And then we can talk more about Iona now because they're the 1 seed. If Ryder were to make it to the championship game on Saturday, Iona is the 1 seed. They may be the favorite, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Joe Lenardi, I looked today, has them as a 12 or 13 seed in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
They're a really good team. And, we beat them on the road this year, had that close home loss in the last game of the season like we discussed. What are their chances against Iona?
Well, as we saw in the last game of the season, as we talked about earlier, this is a great team. They didn't bench any of their starters, which is what I was curious about because a game that didn't have any implication, you would imagine, at least their star player would say. Clayton, he is an absolute monster on that team. Iona is dangerous. Their guard play is very, very solid, and they have that center, 55. I forget the name, my mistake, but he's a defensive beast. He averages 2 blocks a game, and then Clayton just all around is a very, very smart athlete. On the other side of the ball, you got DJ Murray, who's defensively a decent guard, but you also have Corey McKeithen, and that's one guy that I think is very underestimated as far as his defensive ability goes. He made very, very clutch defensive plays in that game against Iona, and he showed that he can lock up, some of the top guards in this conference and maybe even some of the NCAA in general. He's going to be a key piece off that bench, and he might have to carry the load defensively if they decide to start Tariq and bench Ogamuno Johnson. I think Ogamuno and McKeithen will make a deadly duo. But also keep in mind, Coach Rick Pitino on the other end of Iona. Legendary coach. We know what he did with Louisville in 2013. Obviously, there was the scandals, but we don't have to dive into that. He's a phenomenal coach. But the fact that we were able to keep up with Iona's starters and keep it a close game and come down to the wire in that final game leads me to believe that we actually have a chance of beating this team, even with a legendary coach and even with a really, really good player in Clayton.
That's a good point, Aaron. Actually, adding on to that, honestly, if we're being real here, it's coming. It'll be a finals, number 1 versus number 2.
Yes.
It's strength versus strength. A spot in the tournament is on the line for this match. We both understand that it's really going to come down to who's going to be the guy to step up in that match. It's really like the mistakes that happened in that game from tip-off until the last point of the game. That will be the decider. Strength versus strength, like I just said. It's really just going to come down to who can make that final decision.
Do you think that those mistakes that were made in the last game, do you think we're going to learn from those and take that to the final if we do make that? Which, in my eyes, I do see it as a 1 versus 2 seed in the finals for the championship. But is this last game against Iona going to affect the way we approach the next game against Iona?
Any sensible coach would go back to their players and definitely have a chat about it. I myself wasn't able to see the match, but based off what we've talked about earlier, I do understand that it was a close match, and things obviously will be needed to be discussed because obviously the coach will talk to his players about all possible scenarios in the sense of, well, it is a bit early, but obviously they'll focus on their first match, like Fairfield or
St. Peter's.
Play that team, they win, focus on the semis. That game, if it's them versus Iona, he'll have a game plan for if it does get to that situation.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. So, but we got to worry about it game by game.
Exactly.
So,
Thinking about it too, Ryder hasn't made the NCAA tournament in 30 years. We just celebrated our 30th anniversary of the NDC championship in '93.
That's right, the '93 team.
So for making the NCAA tournament for the 3rd time in school history would be monumental.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially for Coach Baggett's career.
Cool. I'd love to see that.
So what I've pulled from today, this conversation, this episode, we got a lot to look forward to in Champ Week this week, and maybe even beyond next week in the tournament, the big dance. Broncs are looking good.
Go Bronc.
So,
yep, go Broncs.
Go Broncs. Thank you for breaking it down with us. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. Tune in after spring break for 2 episodes. We'll be breaking down the men's Bronx baseball team and the softball team. So be sure to tune in. Be sure to keep your ears open. And thank you. Thank you, Aaron, for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you guys for having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you. For Dante, Thomas, and of course me, Patrick. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.